Hey guys, this is Mike Webb of the Film Etc. podcast. Wanted to jump on before the episode begins. Usually, when I put this show out, I want to put it out on time so that my fellow listeners can get to hear what my thoughts are for the new releases of the week. But sometimes life can get in the way, and for that reason alone, I had to postpone this episode for a number of reasons. The main thing is my father had a very special project with my uncle and he had to go out of town for a couple weeks. Uh, but he's back now. But him and my mother, they own a cleaning business, and I'm one of their employees as well. And so I had to fill in his shoes for those weeks, and my life just became incredibly busy. Um, and so yeah, and by the time I had to another reason is that by the time I had to gather my thoughts on the movies that I was going to review this week and just record them all, for some odd reason, my computer was acting weird and I couldn't get onto the internet. And I even told everyone that I was going to put this episode out by the weekend. Unfortunately, I also had a very busy weekend and I was just feeling very down. But I also had some family that was in town as well. And I just didn't want to upset them or anything. And because of all those reasons, I was not able to watch new releases this week, and this episode has been delayed for a lot longer than I was anticipating it was going to be. So, to make up for that, and for the sake of posterity, I am going to give you two episodes this week. This episode with my reviews of Dear Evan Hansen and the Starling, and then this week's episode in particular, normally scheduled. But I will try my best to see some new releases that came out earlier, like this weekend and all that stuff, just to have it up before the new weekend comes around and all that stuff. But again, I apologize for any inconvenience and whatnot. I hope you all understand. I hope you all forgive me. Thank you all for listening and I hope you all enjoy this episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Film Etc., the only movie review podcast you need in life. My name is Mike Webb. I'll be your host. If you're wondering why the audio sounds a bit different than last week, it's because I'm recording this through my phone. I'm using the Anchor app because all of a sudden the Anchor website is preventing me from using their website and recording new audio. But in case you guys are new to the show, I basically review the new releases of the week and grade them on a scale from 0 to 10. This will be an interesting week, but once again, it's another twofer. But this week, we have reviews of the new musical, Dear Evan Hansen, which is based off of the Tony Award-winning stage musical of the same name. We also have the new comedy drama on Netflix called The Starling with Melissa McCarthy, Chris O'Dowd, and Kevin Kline. So without further ado, let's get this show started. Just a little bit of a heads up, or in case you guys are new to the show, or you just need a little bit of a refresher, but I am diagnosed with autism, so you may hear my wording just a bit off and get a little jumbled up here and there. So I hope you all forgive me, but anyway, thank you all for listening to this week's episode. Dear Evan Hansen is technically the fourth feature film from director Stephen Chbosky, who previously worked as a novelist and adapted his own book, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, as a feature film in 2012. He was also at the helm of 2017's Wonder. Dear Evan Hansen is based off of the 2015 musical of the same name, where it won 6 Tony Awards in 2017, including Best Musical and Best Actor in a Musical for Ben Platt, who reprises his role as Evan Hansen, a high school senior with a severe social anxiety disorder, writes letters to himself for his therapist. But one day, he unintentionally gets caught up in a lie after the family of a classmate who committed suicide mistakes one of Hansen's letters for their son's suicide note. The film also stars Caitlin Dever, Amanda Stenberg, Nick Dodani, Colton Ryan, Danny Pino, Amy Adams, and Julianne Moore. So Dear Evan Hansen is considered the fourth musical I've seen this year. There are 3 others that defined good, weird, and then bad. In the Heights, which came out earlier in the summer, I just thought it was touched upon by cultural differences and all that stuff, and I thought it was a great little musical from Lin-Manuel Miranda. It was really, really good, and it underperformed the box office, and I'm very surprised it didn't do so well, but I think it's one of the best movies I've seen so far this year. There was a weird musical that also came out in the summer called Annette, starring Adam Driver and Marion Cotillard. They play this couple who just like love each other. It's the songs are by the Sparks Brothers, or the band Sparks, I would say, but it's by the brothers Ron and Russell Mael, who also had a documentary, as they were the subjects of the documentary The Sparks Brothers by Edgar Wright, which came out earlier this year as well. And but yeah, the plot, they fall in love, they have a baby, but the baby is actually played by a marionette doll. I'm not even joking. That actually happens in the movie. And although I like the craftsmanship involved, it's a very audacious movie. And I'm not the biggest fan of like its character development. Plus, it's also very long as well. And the songs weren't that very memorable in my personal opinion. There were like 3 songs, and one of them was the song where Marion Cotillard is going into labor, and the nurses are singing "Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in," and just like over and over again. But yeah, Annette was a very weird movie, even though I gave it like a 6 out of 10 overall. I didn't review it for this show, but it was very weird. And then the movie that I had to look back up and see what else was a musical that came out for my list. And I forgot, oh, there's the worst movie I've seen so far this year, which is Sia's Music, which is a downright offensive look at autism. Oh, man. And this got nominated for 2 Golden Globes as well, which I'm baffled by. But yeah. But for Dear Evan Hansen, this unfortunately falls between the latter 2 movies. It's like sandwiched in between. Now, I have not seen the original stage musical, and the way the movie starts up is you see Evan Hansen. He is like taking medication. He has this cast around because he like fell from a tree like during the summer, and he's been going to therapy. We don't see the therapist at all in this movie, but one of the things he's been doing is that he's been writing letters to himself and stuff like that. And you get to see there's a fellow classmate who also feels kind of like an outsider as well. This is a kid named Connor, played by Colton Ryan, who actually in the original Broadway show was considered the understudy for a few characters. But yeah, it sets up within the first 20 minutes of how he takes the letter, and he just like commits suicide because he was just not feeling good about himself. But yeah, it sets up for the first 20 minutes, and then once the story gets in, you're automatically gonna get the familiar beats by the end. It's like gonna go all downhill from there. But yeah, I mentioned this is the first 20 minutes of how it sets up. This movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes long. It does not need to be that long, in my personal opinion. I mean, I like the idea of how it can portray the use of mental illness and suicide. Like, it's very dark subject matter. But again, I've not seen the original stage musical. Apparently, people bought into it. It doesn't work on film. I just can't, for the life of me, get into the fact that this socially awkward high schooler, played by Ben Platt, is trying to build up this relationship to a family he's never even met because their kid committed suicide. And even the family aspect of it all, they weren't really kind to him either. Like, even the sister, played by Caitlin Dever, just had very bad feelings about him in general. Let's talk about Ben Platt for a minute, who a lot of people online are saying he's too old to play a high schooler in this film. He actually turned 28 years old the day the movie came out. He has even defended himself and stated that there were actors who were in their 20s and 30s when Grease came out back in 1978. Like, you had the actress Stockard Channing, who played Betty Rizzo, a high schooler. Stockard Channing herself was 34 when the movie came out. And it's not just Platt. Most of the high schoolers in this movie are also in their 20s as well. Nick Dodani, who plays Evan's friend Jared, he's 27. Caitlin Dever's 24. Amanda Stenberg turns 23 in a few weeks. Like, that's insane. But all that aside, I just think Platt is very miscast, even though one of the producers is his father, Mark Platt. And when they were trying to get this movie greenlit, they were trying to recast someone else other than Ben. And by the end of it, and I put this in quotes, and I read a headline saying, "It's either him or nothing." I mean, I don't know. I just find it odd that Ben Platt is reprising his role for the big screen. The way we're trying to feel sympathy for this character and how he's going through all this is just baffling. Like, some people are calling his characteristics almost like a sociopath. I mean, they're not wrong, but I feel like he's more of a shy yet somewhat damaged personality inside him. Like when you know it's like gonna go downhill, he just like somehow gets away lightly, and even though it's just gonna like blow it all up on his face or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's all right, I guess. Ben Platt's acting is just okay. The only good performances I got out of this entire movie were both Caitlin Dever and Amanda Stenberg. Caitlin Dever, as I mentioned, she plays the sister of the suicide character named Connor. She plays the sister. I just said sister twice. I don't know why, but she had this like feeling like she wasn't very close to him and all that stuff. And then for like one like song, there's like Ben Platt and her just like singing about how much Connor like loved her or something like that. But in reality, it's Evan Hansen who's just like falling for Caitlin Dever's character. And I thought her performance was pretty good. She sings pretty well as well. There's also Amanda Stenberg's character. If you don't know who Amanda Stenberg is, she is Rue in the Hunger Games movies. She was the lead role in the movie Everything Everything with Nick Robinson, as well as a really good movie called The Hate You Give, which is about racial inequality in like modern day society. It's a really good movie. Check out The Hate You Give. But Stenberg's character, she kind of relates to Evan Hansen, that believing that she is also mentally ill. She is somehow kind of like part of like the student body council, and she wants to like help create this like project in honor of Connor's name and all that stuff. There's also a new song that Amanda Stenberg's character gets to sing, and I think most of the songs in this movie are just okay, but I think her like song stands out because the song is called The Anonymous Ones, and I just feel like we're just like somehow trying to like connect to the fact that it's a song where it's trying to like I mean, how should I put this? Like, I didn't put this in my notes, but I would say it's just an interesting song, I would say, overall. You get some big names like Amy Adams and Julianne Moore, but they have very little to do. Amy Adams is not having a good decade so far. With this, Hillbilly Elegy, which came out last year, which is not good, and The Woman in the Window, which also stars her and Julianne Moore, but they have like a brief scene together. Julianne Moore plays Evan Hansen's mother, who apparently has a bigger role in the stage musical. In fact, a bunch of her numbers from the original stage musical got cut out for the film version. A bunch of numbers overall. I'm not just saying, but it's mostly the ones her character sings in that musical. Julianne Moore only gets to sing one number in the entire movie, but yeah. And Amy Adams should probably get like a new agent or something like that. She's been having a hard time getting work done around these days. We do get to see a Woman in the Window reunion between Amy Adams and Julianne Moore, and like that movie, they only have one scene together, which is kind of nuts. The songs are by Benj Pasek and Justin Paul, who were the songwriters to both La La Land and The Greatest Showman. The songs overall, they're not particularly good, in fact. But I mentioned there were a couple okay ones. Like I mentioned the Amanda Stenberg number, and there were a couple that Caitlin Dever sings. But in fact, most of the numbers in this movie, I just felt like I felt awkward and uncomfortable. And I don't know if that's on purpose or whatnot, like if that's like the show's purpose in general. There are a few numbers where Ben Platt is just belting out in a dining room and the other characters are just speaking normally in conversation. Like that felt very odd in my personal opinion. There's also a number where they have to fake an email account pretending that both Evan Hansen and Connor were somehow friends. That number alone, I just felt completely embarrassed watching that unfold. Like I don't know. This movie is man, this movie's a mess, you guys. I just cannot. There's also the big second act number where Evan Hansen is trying to give this speech, this eulogy, and it's trying to make the audience feel that you're not alone in this world. In fact, the number is called You're Not Alone. This is also a musical that doesn't have any dancing or choreography whatsoever. So if you're a big movie musical lover, you're not going to find any dancing choreography numbers, no Busby Berkeley choreography or anything like that. But most of the songs, if not all the songs spoken in this film, are just like in the halls of high school. and you get to see like the weird facial expressions that they're just like unfolding and stuff like that. I did mention the structure of the story and when it became obviously predictable. It's not even well told in my opinion. They brought the same book writer Stephen Levinson to write the screenplay. It is poorly shot. It is poorly directed by Stephen Chbosky, and I like Chbosky's work. I think The Perks of Being a Wallflower is not just one of the best coming of age movies of the past 10 years, but it was also one of my top 10 favorites the year it came out, and I thought Wonder was a delightful, surprising tearjerker. And even though it deals with heavy subject matter, it wants the audience to grab tissues and shed a few tears, maybe even possibly destroy them afterwards. I did not cry once at all. I felt some emotion, but I was mostly not invested in this movie at all because I knew where this movie was going after the first 20 minutes. Now, there are some people who are probably going to listen to this review and think, Mike, you're being too harsh. I think you're missing the point here. I actually understood the point that Dear Evan Hansen was making, and there was very little that I found with this movie. Again, I like the performances from Caitlin Dever and Amanda Stenberg. Even Julianne Moore got some good acting chops in here, but this movie made me angry. In fact, the more I think about it, the more I feel like I want to lower my number. But this is one where film critics will hate, but audience will love and adore it. It is a total crowd pleaser of a film, kind of like The Greatest Showman. All my close friends and family, they love that movie because they love the catchy earworm soundtrack and the glossy production. They love Hugh Jackman and all that stuff. But I actually saw a work in progress cut of that movie like 2 months before the movie actually came out, and the visual effects weren't done and you could still see some wires and all that stuff. But yeah, I haven't seen it since, and I over time I thought this wasn't a real good musical in my personal opinion. I think even though Dear Evan Hansen is made by the same people, I just didn't think this movie was a good movie in my opinion. It's not good. I'm gonna have to say this again. It is not good. I saw this movie about 2 weeks ago and I have not stopped thinking about it since, which is very, very odd. Because normally when you see a movie and you think about it over time, you think about how much you admire it, thinking about how you love the craft, the acting, or anything really, really good that stands out in that particular matter. This is, however, the exact opposite for me with Dear Evan Hansen. It's not complete garbage by all means. It's not one of those movies that are so bad it's good. This isn't even enjoyably bad. It's interestingly and awkwardly bad in my personal opinion, but oh my goodness. I wrote 3 pages of notes for this review. That's like the most I've ever like taken for like notes for this movie, but oh man, Dear Evan Hansen was not good at all. But if you want to like forfeit everything I just said, and if you want to see this movie, it is now playing in theaters. But anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on Dear Evan Hansen, and now let's get to The Starling. The Starling is technically the 4th film from director Theodore Melfi. He's perhaps best known for directing the 2014 comedy drama St. Vincent starring Bill Murray and the 2016 film Hidden Figures, which was nominated for 3 Academy Awards including Best Picture. Melfi even scored an adapted screenplay nomination with co-writer Alison Schroeder. In this film, Melissa McCarthy and Chris O'Dowd play Lily and Jack, a married couple who suffer from a hardship, leaving Jack to head off to deal with his grief, while Lily remains in the real world dealing with her own guilt. As if her troubles weren't bad enough, a starling that has nested in her backyard begins to harass and attack her, and she becomes comically obsessed with killing it. Lily eventually finds guidance from Larry, played by Kevin Kline, a quirky psychologist turned veterinarian with a troubled past of his own. The two form a unique and unlikely friendship as they each help the other to explore, acknowledge, and confront their problems. The film also stars Daveed Diggs, Skylar Gisondo, Laura Harrier, Rosalind Chow, Kimberly Quinn, Loretta Devine, and Timothy Olyphant. So I knew very little about this movie going in, other than the fact that this is Theodore Melfi's follow-up to Hidden Figures, which was a box office and awards juggernaut. Well, not that big of a juggernaut, I would say, but it got a lot of love from critics and audiences, and I even enjoyed that movie so far. And it had a very interesting cast overall. I mean, it reunites Melissa McCarthy and Chris O'Dowd, who are in Melfi's St. Vincent, which I need to rewatch because there were some people who just think it's just like a total crowd pleaser, and I've only seen it once and I thought it was fine, and I probably need to reevaluate it reevaluate it one day. But I'm not the biggest Melissa McCarthy fan overall. I mean, she broke out big with 2011's Bridesmaids, and then all of a sudden she was like originally like a character actor, just like had these like small roles. And then when Bridesmaids came into the big screen, all of a sudden she became a household name, and then she started to reinvigorate her career, and that she could be the leading lady on these like weird comedies like Identity Thief with Jason Bateman. That's not a good movie. And then she has those comedies she does with her husband Ben Falcone at the director's chair. Like she does the movies like Tammy and The Boss and Life at the Party and Thunder Force, which came out recently on Netflix. But yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Melissa McCarthy comedic wise, although I will say Spy is a really good comedy. But she can pull off some dramatic work as well. She's really great in the film Can You Ever Forgive Me, where she plays author Lee Israel, who just forged documents from like famous authors like Samuel Beckett and whatnot. It's a really good movie. Her and Richard E. Grant give some of the best performances that came out a few years ago. I also like Kevin Kline as an actor and stuff like that. I mean, I love Fish Called Wanda. I like some of his other stuff as well, but I'm probably blanking on it right now at the moment. But other than that, how's the movie? Well, unfortunately, it's not good. Yet, I'm not sure what to make of this movie overall. I mean, this was a rough week for me and the movies this week. That's all I'm going to say for now. I mean, both this and Dear Evan Hansen make me want to rethink about my choices in life. This movie is a very melodramatic tale on grief that wants to pull you in, but ultimately it does not. McCarthy's character has to visit O'Dowd's character in a mental health facility every week. She brings a brown lunch sack filled with Hostess snowballs. She works at a grocery store, like a little small supermarket. But she, in the meantime, is also like trying to clear their house of the stuff that once was. I'm not going to like get into like huge detail on why they're grieving so much and all that stuff. But yeah, she wants to fix up the house a bit. Their yard looks ridiculous. Their garden is not growing anything. All of a sudden, there's this bird, this starling, who's like very territorial on its ground. It's like a bird like you don't want to be messed with. And there are scenes where that bird is trying to hit McCarthy's head, and it's trying so hard to like play for laughs and all that stuff. I mean, I did get a few laughs here and there, just not a lot. But it wasn't any of the scenes where the bird is trying to hit Melissa McCarthy and all that stuff. Also, the bird is CGI'd, and it's not good, and it's not good at all, I will say. The acting is very subpar. Both Melissa McCarthy and Chris O'Dowd are giving it their all. Kevin Kline is Kevin Kline. I mean, his presence helps carry the movie from being terrible, yet there's one scene where he just like dumps out everything he can like explain to Melissa McCarthy's character. And it's a huge waste of the supporting cast. Both Daveed Diggs and Timothy Olyphant are not in it for very long. They like show up in like 2-3 scenes, and they just like speak like, I don't know, 5 words. Daveed Diggs plays like one of the employees over at the mental health facility, and Timothy Olyphant plays Melissa McCarthy's boss at the grocery store. And there's also supporting characters like Skylar Gizondo's character, who's like trying to help McCarthy out, figure out with this bird problem. He's not in it very much. Skylar Gizondo was one of the breakout stars of the coming of age movie Booksmart. Laura Harrier from Spider-Man Homecoming and BlacKkKlansman, she only appears in a couple brief scenes as well. Yeah, huge waste of a supporting cast. This is mainly Melissa McCarthy, Chris O'Dowd, and Kevin Kline's movie. But anyway, there's also this score by Benjamin Wallfish that's like randomly trying to swoon you in. It's just like music that is just like building up and trying to make you feel emotional, but it ultimately does not do it. It's also a total bore in my personal opinion. I mean, it's not a very long movie. It's only an hour 45, but it just felt like it was like going on and on. It's not like dull. Well, I mean, it kind of feels dull, but it's not. I think it's poorly paced in my personal opinion. It's also one of those like movies that it's just simple awards bait. It's trying to get a lot of attention, and it ultimately just fails miserably. And there's also this kind of like alt rock folk soundtrack. You have like original songs from like Brandy Carlisle and Nate Ruess and the Lumineers and Judah and the Lion. Like they're just like trying to make you, and the lyrics are like about like what the movie is about overall. But oh my goodness. I mean, I don't know what else to say about the Starling. I just want to be quick because I was giving out so much detail onto Dear Evan Hansen that I wanted to be somewhat very quick on this movie. But yeah, if you, for some odd reason, are interested in watching the Starling, it is now streaming on Netflix. But anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on the Starling. And now let's get to our review roundup. So if you guys are new to the review roundup, or if you need a little bit of refresher, I basically review the movies and grade them on a number scale from 0 to 10. Somewhere between an 8 to a 10, I would give a high recommendation. 7 to a 7.9, still a solid recommendation. 6 to a 6.9, all right, I would say. 5 to a 5.9 is just average. And then anything below a 5, I would just not bother. Unfortunately, that's the case for this week for both movies. I would have to give the Starling a solid 4 out of 10. It was just a complete bore, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of Melissa McCarthy and Chris O'Dowd, they're both trying, but I think the presence of Kevin Kline and what his character is able to do is just help preventing it from keeping the movie being terrible, in my opinion. And yeah, that CGI bird. Also, the hostess snowballs. This movie is full of metaphors. I failed to mention this, but yeah, there's like a metaphor for the Starling, there's a metaphor for the hostess snowballs and all that stuff, and I'm just like rolling my eyes from time to time as well. But yeah, a solid 4 out of 10 for the Starling. And Dear Evan Hansen, I cannot in good conscience give this movie a good rating. There was just so much on my mind. Again, I was thinking about this movie for 2 weeks, and I wish I can just like forget it, but I just somehow can't. I think I probably will forget it over time, but overall, I was vaguely disappointed. 3.5 out of 10. It was just a big dud with the actors just milking it in. It's a big milk dud in my personal opinion, but yeah, let's just be done for the day. Well, that does it for this week's episode, you guys. I apologize for putting this episode out very, very late. I had some time to think about the movies that I reviewed, but I'm hoping next week will be better. But in the meantime, you can follow and subscribe to the show on the many places that we stream, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, you name it. Please leave a 5-star rating on our Apple Podcast page. That way this show can get up to the top of the charts. Please tell your friends, spread the word of mouth, tell your friends about the show. I'll be back next week with more movie reviews. Who knows if it's like a new release or a new movie that came out to VOD recently that I'm going to catch up on. But in the meantime, guys, you can follow me on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at RealMikeWebb. You can also follow the show on Instagram at FilmETCcast. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe, wash your hands, and until next time, I will see you all at the cinema.